Lee's chance is at hand. Late November 1776. The two generals now lead regiments in separate retreats. Washington through the center of New Jersey with the main army. Lee north with a regiment of 4,000. As they move, Lee corresponds with all those who might be sympathetic to his personal cause. Washington can sense the mounting chaos. Both sides, loyalist and patriot, seem to have given up on the cause of the Revolution.
As Washington flees across New Jersey and people are unwilling to help him, he fully realizes that this revolution might be over. He's a commander-in-chief of an army that has shrunk drastically. He's on the run with the enemy on his heels. Congressmen write their wives and their friends letters saying that the game is just about up. They're fearful that this war is shortly going to be over.
Washington turns his focus toward Philadelphia, around which he will try to build a defense. But General Charles Lee's troops are still 50 miles north. Without them, Washington's numbers are inadequate. Like it or not, he needs Lee. Lee has other plans, and they don't include helping Washington. He ignores the commander's almost daily pleas to rejoin the main army. Friday the 13th, 1776. General Charles Lee has no intention of coming to Washington's aid. Instead, he stops his retreat and takes residence in a comfortable tavern. There, Lee makes his final move. It won't be a good one. Lee works over his correspondences denigrating George Washington. Yet he remains unaware of the scene just outside his window. British scouts have tracked Lee to the tavern and will take him by surprise.
The scene was almost comical if it hadn't been so tragic. Lee was surrounded by a British cavalry in his dressing gown, slippers basically.
Lee puts up no fight. In one brazen and sloppy moment, his campaign for leadership of the Continental Army comes to an abrupt halt. London celebrates the capture. The traitor Lee, some say, is the only rebel general they had cause to fear. Even the stock market goes up on the belief that this is the coup that will end the war. But Washington is not so easily fazed. A political rival out of the way, and his absent troops now marching toward him, Washington regains his sense of mission. His own officers, like General Nathaniel Greene, take notice.
His Excellency, George Washington, never appeared so much advantage as in the hour of distress.
Again, it falls to Washington to turn the fortunes of the war, if it isn't too late. New Jersey is now a battlefield, not only for the two armies, but for the colonists themselves. Amidst the tension, citizens weigh their loyalties. Should they side with the fleeing Continentals or with the British occupiers, whose very presence has created fresh hostility in the colony?
And this is what happens, right, when you put military men in the charge of what is also a delicate political operation. And in this respect, I think one has to be a little sympathetic to the British government. Putting down an anti-imperial, anti-colonial uprising is not something anyone had much experience with in the 18th century.
As winter sets in, both sides retrench. The British occupy more of New Jersey by spreading smaller units throughout the territory. Washington, meanwhile, escapes into Pennsylvania, where he hopes to prevent an attack on Philadelphia, the seat of Congress. Mid-December 1776. The mood of despair has crept into his own soldiers as well. Many simply decide it is time to go home. Faith in the revolution is falling as fast as the temperature.
It's been a wretched year for them. Conditions have been harsh. Smallpox has broken out in the army. That's in addition to the other camp diseases that ravage the army at regular intervals. Militarily, things have been disastrous. There's not a lot of incentive for them to stay.
One man watches in horror. Thomas Paine had joined Washington's army as one of the Revolution's first war correspondents. Now, the young author of Common Sense, who helped spark independence only a year earlier, knows he must once again take up his pen. This time, he will not aim his words at the enemy, but directly at the hearts of American patriots.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. Thomas Paine.
With a sense that the war rides as much on his words as on the musket ball, Paine rushes to Philadelphia to print his new manifesto. There, Paine finds his hometown in chaos. Fear and rumor are spreading like a virus. Citizens are convinced that Washington's forces won't be able to defend Philadelphia. In response, people flee. A steady stream of Philadelphians take their belongings and head elsewhere, leaving their empty homes and closed-up shops to the British, if they should come. The citizens are not alone. Continental Congress and all its members have evacuated too, heading further south to Baltimore. Against this backdrop, Thomas Paine gets to work. In a span of 10 days, the young author and printer, the man who arrived in America only a few years ago full of hopes to begin a new world in these raw colonies, sets his thoughts to print. He titles it American Crisis. As quickly and widely as Common Sense had spread, so too does this book. It begins to work its magic instantly.
What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Thomas Paine.
This was really the low point for the Americans. Washington's reputation was really at stake, and with that reputation, the ability to round up fresh recruits for the army. So it was a really do-or-die moment in New Jersey.
Paine's words only go so far. Washington must alter his entire approach to the war. He must make some bold move that will restore faith in him and in the durability of the revolution.
He makes up his mind, I've got to shift tactics. He thinks that it isn't necessary to win the war on the battlefield. He just can't lose it. The most important thing is to keep the army together. At the same time, back home, convincing the mothers and wives and children of British soldiers that the cost of this war is too high in deaths, casualties, and for Parliament too, in money.
For the British commander, William Howe, things are not going as planned. The occupation of New Jersey has spread his forces thin. In London, people are asking why the war is not yet won. He needs time to think. Howe has his army dig in for the winter. To guard against rebel attacks, he places Hessian forces at key junctions along the Delaware River, places like Burlington and Trenton. As the cold sets in, the British expect to catch their breath before the next season of fighting begins. Howe's command along the Delaware River falls to Hessian Colonel Johann Rall. Rall has been on constant alert. But now, holed up in Trenton, he is finally beginning to relax. An attack is unlikely as the weather turns grim, and a blizzard blows outside his window. Scouts soon report to Washington that the Hessian army has left its defenses down. Washington hatches his plan. He will attack. It may well be his last shot, a final effort to revive his reputation, the spirit of his soldiers, and the survival of the revolution. In the last cold days of 1776, Washington prepares his army for what may be the final gambit in the War of Independence. Few believe he can still be victorious. His own soldiers regularly leave the army as their commissions come up. An urgency creeps into everything and everyone.
We are all of the opinion, my dear General, that delay is now equal to a total defeat. Some enterprise must be undertaken in our present circumstances, or we must give up the cause. Joseph Reed, Continental Officer.
By the time Christmas of 1776 approaches, everything has bottomed out. His army has shrunk to only about 5,000 men. He's lost the support of a lot of the people, and all appears to be lost. It truly is a do-or-die situation.
Washington makes a bold decision. He will strike the enemy at Trenton. On Christmas Day, Washington tells his army to prepare. After months of defeat and loss, they understand his purpose. The army will now take the offensive. They will be crossing the Delaware back to New Jersey. Shortly before departing, Washington has American Crisis read aloud.
Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet and to repulse it. Time hath found us. Thomas Paine.
It will be a monumental task. Washington's men must ford a near-frozen river in a blizzard and get across fast enough to take the enemy before dawn by surprise. Yet Washington's leadership, his army, and the revolution all ride on the success of this singular mission. Washington himself will lead the soldiers into battle for the first time in the war. The general knows that if they fail, there will be no more chances.